I'm Alan Mathies, Emeritus Dean of the Keck School of Medicine, and I'm pleased to be here today to interview G. Denman Hammond, a 50-year member of the faculty of the School of Medicine. Denny, welcome.
Well, thank you, Alan. I'm honored to be here.
Would you tell us a little of your early educational development and what brought you to USC?
Sure. I was born and grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. Went to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill to undergraduate school, and graduated in medicine at the University of Pennsylvania. I spent quite a few years in Pennsylvania in internship and residencies at the Pennsylvania Hospital, the nation's first hospital, started by Benjamin Franklin.
Mm-hmm.
And I went there just recently for a return visit. I also went to the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And after being recalled to active duty for a couple of years during the Korean War, I became a Navy flight surgeon and had some duty in the North Atlantic. But I returned to Children's Hospital Philadelphia, and having finished my postgraduate training, my wife, Polly, persuaded me to move to California.
She was a native of California?
She was a native of California, and she had a sister and some family living there at the time. So while I was in the Navy and overseas, she had gone to California and loved it again, so said, why don't we go there? I'd never been, so I thought it was a good idea. And I found a research fellowship at the University of California, San Francisco. And I went there and did 2 years of research fellowship in endocrinology, metabolism, biochemistry. And at the time, I had become very interested in hematology. I was asked to stay on the faculty. And I said, if you'll allow me to develop a division of hematology and oncology, I'd like to. So that's what I did. I stayed there 4 years. I've always had a strong like for hematology, but the main hematology at that time was treating acute leukemia of children. And that's where the National Cancer Institute actually started their cooperative group research program, treating acute leukemia of children. So I became involved with the acute leukemia cooperative chemotherapy group. It began in 1955. Children's Hospital Los Angeles was one of the original members. And the outstanding person there that led to attracting me to his staff was Dr. Philip Sturgeon. He was a world-known pediatric hematologist. He did some of the original basic science work about pediatric blood values. So I joined him. He had two colleagues there, Dr. Carol Hyman, Dr. Charles Brubaker, and I was brought in as to round out his staff, and we had met for several years at some of the research meetings in California. Well, the surprising thing was that after I'd been there 3 years, he decided to accept a job as the Director of Research for the American Red Cross. So he left USC and left Children's Hospital. I became the Director of the Division of Hematology, but I changed it to the Division of Hematology and Oncology because that was what we were doing at the time. So I joined USC really through the Children's Hospital and through Philip Sturgeon.
Now that was 1957?
That was 1957.
Right.
And the dean at that time was Clayton Loosley.
Right.
You know, the staff at Children's Hospital, I didn't think interacted a whole lot with the people at the Health Sciences campus. And the Health Sciences campus at that time consisted of a single building.
Right, right.
That was, so I've been at USC through the development of the whole Health Sciences campus. I once had an architect's drawing of that 13-acre campus showing the theoretical 13 buildings that could be built there. Now they're all there.
That's right. That's right.
So that's been my era at the USC School of Medicine.
So your academic affiliations were mostly at Children's Hospital in teaching of pediatrics to our medical students there and the residents and interns,
Yes.
as well as the research.
Children's Hospital was the principal site for the pediatric training of our medical students.
Tell us a little more about your leukemia treatment group, the cooperative and so on.
Well, chemotherapy for cancer actually started in children. The National Cancer Institute was aware that there were 3 medical agents that would make leukemia disappear, and those trials were done in children, the first chemotherapy trials for cancer. They were done by an outstanding physician in Boston. So it became a good idea to try chemotherapy, not only for leukemia but for solid tumors as well. And the NCI developed a cooperative group of 7 institutions. Children's Hospital Los Angeles was one of them. And we have now passed our more than 50th year of national multi-institutional cooperative research on childhood cancer. And there are many chemotherapy and radiation therapy and other specialty cooperative groups now, because if you can combine the data from many patients very quickly, a clinical trial discovering something new and important can be done in just a few years instead of taking so long.
How did that group in childhood cooperative treatment grow? What's the number now?
Well, let's see. I was first elected chairman of that group in 1968 and resigned that position in 1992. The group merged in 2000 with 3 other similar groups. It now has 230 hospitals throughout North America that treat children and adolescents and young adults with cancer. It's the largest childhood cancer research group ever existed in the world, and has produced many advances. The cure rate when I first started treating children at UCSF was essentially 0.
I remember those days.
And now the overall U.S. cure rate for children 15 or less is 78%.
That's great. That's wonderful. Who were some of your colleagues at Children's that particularly stand out in your mind?
Well, I certainly want to mention Dr. Philip Sturgeon. He was the person responsible for recruiting me to Children's Hospital and to USC. He was an outstanding red blood cell hematologist. He didn't really care a whole lot for oncology. He was involved in leukemia. But Carol Hyman, Chuck Brubaker, I recruited when I became the division head, Kenneth Williams, Nomi Shore, Jerry Finkelstein, Jerry Gilchrist. I had been able to get a childhood cancer and hematology training grant and began to train 2 or 3 fellows every year. And they actually populated many of these institutions throughout the country. So that was very gratifying. And I'm sure that's what led to Dean Franz Bauer asking me to chair a committee to search for a director of a to-be-developed cancer center at USC.
Now, this was after the president had declared the war on cancer. Was that correct? That we particularly got interested in having a comprehensive cancer center?
You know, the term comprehensive cancer center was not very widely known at that time. It hadn't been adopted. But the National Cancer Institute, due to the National Cancer Act, felt that there should be centers of excellence in various parts of the country. There were very few cancer research hospitals in the country at that time. And so cancer centers of various kinds were envisioned to be developed in academic and research institutions. When I was persuaded by Dean Bauer to come and try to develop a cancer center at the School of Medicine, the word comprehensive was not really in the vocabulary. there had been an agreement with the Board of Supervisors of the county that a cancer hospital would be built on the county USC Medical Center to be administered by the county, but to be staffed by the physicians and staff from USC. So that was a very attractive goal, but having decided or been persuaded by Dean Franz Bauer.
I think twisted your arm is the right term.
Well,
right?
he did. He asked me to chair a committee to search for somebody to come and develop a cancer center at USC. And I chaired that committee, and we identified some very good people. We had about 4 visitors who came and talked about what kind of a cancer center they would try to develop. And one day, Dean Franz Bauer came to my office at Children's Hospital and persuaded me to take the job. He said the committee had nominated me in my absence. Well, it was an exciting thing, and I think hosting these outstanding people from throughout the country to come look at the job had persuaded me that it was a job that was very attractive and needed to be done. I think it would have taken something like that to persuade me to leave the Children's Hospital, because I think it was a marvelous institution for me to have spent 15 years there. But as you recall, because you were my colleague, you were the associate dean when Franz persuaded me to move to the newly built Keith Administration Building and begin thinking about building a cancer hospital. Well, I rather quickly decided that no cancer hospital would ever be possible unless we built a program and we organized the people at USC to fulfill the vision of an excellent center for cancer care and research and teaching.
Now, my memory would have it that we had a lot of people who were engaged in certain aspects of basic cancer research, clinical care, and so on, but they weren't coordinated. They weren't coming together. They weren't doing other things, and that was a big challenge for you.
That's true. I asked every department chairman in every health science school to identify for me members of the faculty who were treating cancer patients, doing research related to cancer, doing cancer teaching, or serving the community in any cancer field. It turned out there were a lot of them. I interviewed over 100 people to find out what they would think about a cancer center. And a cancer center, we were totally thinking at that time about a program. We knew no cancer hospital would ever be developed unless we had organized the researchers and the educators and the experts in treatment, providing patient care. So it was a big job to organize throughout the university, but I was determined to include all of the people on the health sciences campus, the main campus, and at that time the 6 hospitals that were staffed by USC faculty. So I discovered, as you have suggested, there was a lot of cancer talent. It was situated in many different locations, and many people didn't know that the others were involved in something similar to them. So the first thing I tried to do was organize a lot of committees. We had committees of clinical care, clinical investigation, basic research, cancer education, and I was able to get some outstanding people to chair those committees. And one of them was chaired by Franz Bauer for about the first year.
Good for you.
So we were named a comprehensive cancer center by the National Cancer Institute in June of 1971. No, June of 1973, because I just started in 71. At that time, they named, I think it was 7 cancer centers as NCI designated comprehensive centers. 3 of those were declared to be existing comprehensive centers. So of the 4 or 5 new ones, we were one of the first 4 or 5 to be designated. And we, of course, had no cancer building at the time. USC owned no beds whatever. But developing the plans for a cancer hospital to be built on the county property had occupied quite a bit of time. We had the design. The county had hired architects to help with the design. But at the time, we got about a $12 million construction grant awarded to the county. But at the time, the county was afraid about their financial situation. So the Board of Supervisors felt they just couldn't participate in building a new hospital at the medical center.
Only if the voters approved, and that was Proposition C.
That's right. Proposition C was a taxable proposition. And you know, it passed with 58% yes votes.
I thought it was 62%, but it was not the 66 and 2/3.
It was not the 2/3
Yeah.
that was needed for a new tax. So many people thought that killed the idea of the cancer center and the cancer hospital at that time. But there was a possibility that the county had other ways of funding it. But it was a good idea to see if USC could take that on by itself and without the county's participation. So we requested the president to ask them to hold that $12 million grant for construction until we could see whether the Board of Trustees would take it on. Well, fearing that a county proposition, a bond issue, might not pass, we had to have an alternative plan. So I had developed with a private architect a building to be built on the health sciences campus. It could have been built in a parking lot behind the Norris Library that Kenneth Norris Sr., a former chairman of the board at USC, had designed and built. Well, to make a long story short, it turned out that the Board of Trustees did accept the $12 million grant and the obligation of raising the matching funds to build that cancer hospital. One of the critically important contributions was from Kenneth T. Norris Jr. He got the Norris Foundation and his own personal contribution to contribute the major part of the USC obligation to match that construction grant. So the Kenneth T. Norris Jr. Cancer Hospital and Research Institute was built on the health sciences campus in what used to be a parking lot.
Right. That's where I used to park my car, as a matter of fact. That was a critical step for the university because it demonstrated not only the ability to raise the money from the community to match the cancer grant from the NCI, but it illustrated that we could run a hospital as owned by the university. And that led to the next big step in which you played an important role. Would you tell us a little about that university hospital?
The president of USC at that time was Dr. Zumberg, and he was having a meeting of the medical faculty on the medical campus, and one afternoon had a long discussion, and one of the members of the faculty asked President Zumberg when we would have a university hospital. President Zumberg talked about the financial situation of the university and how much a hospital costs and how well we were doing with the hospitals that we were staffing at that time, so he indicated that we probably would never have a university hospital. You were the dean of the School of Medicine at that time, and I think within a week you had appointed a committee to figure out how we could get a university hospital. That was a very strong committee with several department chairs, and we worked on that for 6 months and did a survey of a lot of members of the faculty. We found that since the school had been stimulating faculty practice during those years, they had found over 25 places to see patients off of the health sciences campus. They were seeing patients all over town. And what we learned from the faculty was they considered a university hospital critical to the future of the School of Medicine. So that committee that you appointed made its report, and you submitted it to the Board of Trustees. There was no immediate response, and after several months, I think you decided to present it to the Board of Counselors of the School of Medicine. They were having a meeting, so you got the Board of Counselors involved, and they got excited about it. They went to the board, and the board decided, let's build it. So that was your critical role in building that hospital.
Well, the persuasion really came, I think, in addition to the fine report, which your committee came forward with, was the fact that we had these outstanding faculty who, members of the Board of Trustees and other important alumni of the university, were seeking as physicians. The Don Skinners, the Marty Weisses,
Yes.
the Les Weiners, and so forth, who they all wanted to access as their own physicians, and to have these gentlemen come out to the Board of Counselors and talk about the importance of having a unified place in which they could see patients and refer from one discipline to another was very important.
Well, it was clear that the broad faculty believed that we had to have our own university hospital. So that was a very strong need, and I think it's always been great that you were able to convince the Board of Trustees that that was important.
What you've mentioned some of the people at the Children's Hospital that were particularly close to you and of whom you are very proud to have an association. Can you tell us any others that throughout the university, in your broader role as Associate Dean and Associate Vice President, that you worked with?
Yes. Let me point out that at the time I joined the faculty, there was only one building on the health sciences campus. And Kenneth Norris Sr. was going to build the Norris Medical Library, so he had an architect design a whole plaza, a quadrangle. There were 13 proposed buildings, and my career at USC saw every one of those proposed building sites occupied. In order to build the university hospital, it was necessary for the school to acquire, the university to acquire additional land, and that was a big problem, but that was done. The key people, I think, in my career at USC have certainly included a succession of deans, notably Franz Bauer and Dean Alan Mathies. As you know, Franz passed away before the Cancer Center and the Cancer Hospital were completed. You, as his successor, as the Dean of the School of Medicine, had a major role in seeing that that cancer hospital, the Norris Cancer Hospital and Research Institute, was built. I think there is some confusion these days about what the Cancer Center is and what the Cancer Hospital is. And I keep trying to make it clear that the Cancer Center is not a building. It was a program of research, education, community service, laboratory, clinical, patient care. So we had a comprehensive cancer center 10 years before the Norris Cancer Hospital and Research Institute was built. During those years, not only have I emphasized the role of Franz Bauer and your successive role to him, but at Children's Hospital, my mentor for the first several years was Philip Sturgeon, an outstanding pediatric hematologist. Dr. Robert Ward became the chairman shortly after I joined there. I've already mentioned several of the people that were on the staff and several that I recruited. And let me point out that at the time I was at Children's Hospital in the first several years, there seemed to be little interaction between the Children's Hospital and the Health Sciences campus, there being only one building there. But the Health Sciences campus began to be built. I was delighted to be asked to serve on the curriculum committee, which always met at the health sciences campus. And that's how I met some of the department chairmen and became involved in activities on the health sciences campus. I think people that were very important in developing the Cancer Center included Dr. Philip Desaya, who chaired the Clinical Investigations Committee for several years. He became the developer of the Children's Oncology Group, which was similar to the acute leukemia childhood cancer group. Also, people at Children's Hospital, Stuart Siegel and Myron Caron, who followed me there. I enjoyed working with the chairman of the departments on the health sciences campus, and increasingly the Children's Hospital came more and more involved in school committees and in school activities.
Right. What were the greatest problems that you thought the school faced during your tenure there?
Well, one was that it didn't have enough physical facilities, starting with one building which had to serve the whole School of Medicine. The development of the structures of the health sciences campus, I've already mentioned, is very important. I think, and I've said before, that the development of a university hospital was much more important to the school than developing a cancer hospital. But the cancer hospital has also catapulted our reputation in an outstanding area of talent at USC into national prominence. So I think also the development of very close ties with the county and the Department of Hospitals there, the Children's Hospital, and some of the other community hospitals that have been major places where our faculty have contributed good care and research. So that's sort of a capsulization of the time that I've been, the 50 years at USC.
Retirement has not been very long for you, a year maybe.
That's about right.
So what are you doing in your retirement?
Well, I still remain active in part at USC whenever I'm invited to. I still remain very active in childhood cancer activities nationally. I've been involved with an organization called the National Childhood Cancer Foundation, which was developed in order to develop some private funds in addition to the federal funds that the Children's Oncology Group gets. The Children's Oncology Group survives by submitting competitive grant applications to the National Cancer Institute. That's a federal budget. It's never enough. We always were approved to get about twice as much money as we got. So it seemed it was very important to start a national foundation dedicated to raising money for that group. So the National Childhood Cancer Foundation, I resigned as its founder and president in 2002, I think, and I've been a volunteer ever since. So I have an office there at their office in Arcadia, and I'm there, 3 or 4 days a week. But volunteering to help the board and to help their public relations and national prominence.
Well, very good. Thank you very much for this interview.
Well, Dr. Mathies, I want to thank you, Alan. You've been a longtime friend. We were associate deans concurrently, and when the Cancer Center needed a new dean to succeed Franz Bauer, you were the dean who really made the cancer hospital happen, and then you made the university hospital happen.
Well, thank you.
So I'm honored to be interviewed by you.
Thank you.